Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're going to wake up in ancient Rome, but not as a senator, a gladiator, or even a baker. Nope, you're someone the history books usually only mention in the margins, if at all. Tonight, you're a Roman prostitute. Yeah, one of the Marites, or maybe even a lupe, which literally means she wolf, but doesn't have anything to do with wolves. You probably won't survive this. That's not melodrama, fam. It's statistics. Your job is dangerous, legally murky, and so socially taboo that you're both everywhere and nowhere. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and time in the comments. I want to know who else is winding down across the empire tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before dawn, the stale warmth of other bodies still lingering in the room. The air smells like wine, sweat, and old perfume that never quite goes away. Your back aches from the straw-head mattress, which flattened a long time ago. It's too early for clients, technically, but someone's already rattling around in the atrium. Probably Brynjar, who never sleeps, not even during her off hours. She's older, cynical, and always up early. Probably counting the night's coins or scraping wax off the floor tiles. The Lupanar never really sleeps. Not in Pompeii, not in this part of town. You sit up slowly, your shift clinging to your skin from the heat. No windows in this place, just little holes in the walls that pass for ventilation. Outside, the sun hasn't broken yet, but the sounds are already starting. Vendors clanging open their stalls, the groan of wooden carts rolling over stone, a dog barking somewhere far off. You pull on your sandals and try not to step on the small scorpion that seems to live under your cot. You name it after that idiot who keeps asking if kissing costs extra. There's no real privacy here, just rows of rooms, each barely big enough for a man to lie down in. The walls are frescoed with obscene scenes, not just decoration, but a literal menu for clients who can't read. So find it arousing. You find a little ridiculous. There's one of a woman balancing on a man's shoulders while pouring wine. And you've actually tried that once. Never again. The guy dislocated something and you got blamed. You pass a torch sconce and use its dying ember to light a new taper. Your first act of the day. Summon a little bit of fire to beat back the gloom. You head toward the shared basin, ducking past Maripe, who's already arguing with someone about whether she is lice. She does. So do most of you. Baths aren't daily affairs for the working class. You splash cold water on your face, then rub a mixture of olive oil and crushed herbs into your skin. Your poor substitute for soap. No lather, no floral scent, but it keeps the grime from sticking. You don't brush your teeth, you scrub them with charcoal and vinegar if you're lucky, and the powder tastes like burnt regret. Then you scrape your body with a strittle, the little curved blade that Roman athletes use to get clean after a sweat. It never really works the way it's supposed to, especially on your arms where last night's bruises are starting to bloom. Next, the hair. Yours is knotted and greasy, but you do your best with a bronze comb, pulling it into a simple twist and securing it with pins. No wigs today. You save those for Satinia or when someone rich might show up. Today, it's the usual. Laborers, sailors, bored shopkeepers pretending they're running errands. You smear a bit of red ochre on your cheeks and tint your lips with mulberry paste. Just enough to look worth the coin. Not enough to be mistaken for a Matrona. Heaven forbid. Before breakfast, you offer a quiet prayer to Venus. There's a tiny shrine in the corner, blackened from years of candle smoke. Someone left a honey cake yesterday. It's half-eaten. You whisper a few lines from memory. Something between reverence and routine. Venus, goddess of love, protector of those who sell it. Hear me. Keep away the drunkards who don't pay. Keep away the ones who bite. Keep my wounds silent, my skin smooth, and my purse full. You know, it's mostly superstition, but there's comfort in ritual. Even if Venus doesn't listen, someone might. One of the doors cacks. Your first client of the day arrives, shrugging off a cloak and trying not to make eye contact. He always looks like he regrets everything. You recognize him, a fishmonger who sells near the gate. He smells like brine and cold wine, like someone who's been up all night gutting things. He doesn't want to talk. Most of them don't. They pretend it's your idea to keep things silent. but you know the truth. If they hear your voice, it gets harder to forget you, harder to lie to themselves. You take him to a room. The walls are damp. He grunts. You fake a sigh. And just like that, the day has begun. Historically speaking, the daily grind for Roman prostitutes varied wildly depending on where you were on the social food chain. You're on the lower rung. You're in the Lupanar of Pompeii, the most famous brothel in the city, preserved under volcanic ash like some bizarre museum of the flesh. Some prostitutes called meretrices registered with the state and had a bit more autonomy. Others like the Prostitutes worked under a Leno or Lena, a pimp basically. Some were slaves, others technically free but trapped economically. It's a spectrum and it's not neat. Fun fringe fact. There were actually tokens spintry with explicit images on them possibly used in brothel as currency or entry passes. No one really agrees on what they were, for which leads us to tonight's first scholarly debate. Were these sex tokens part of a secret economy or just souvenirs for degenerates with deep pockets? No one knows. But the idea of ancient Rome having its own weird version of adult arcade tokens is strangely fitting. You finish with your first client and check the tiny basket near the door. 2 copper asses, not even enough for a proper lunch. You mutter a curse at Mercury under your breath. God of thieves and merchants. Sometimes it feels like he invented your whole career path just for the laughs. You head back to your room, roll your shoulders, and brace yourself. It's barely sunrise. This day has only just begun. The sun finally breaches the narrow slit in the wall, casting a warm stripe of light across the floor that doesn't quite reach your feet. You're sitting on your cot, legs tucked up, rubbing olive oil into your elbows. It's not for a glamour. It's to keep your skin from cracking. Your second client hasn't arrived yet, so you use the lull to get ready in the only way you can. With ritual, repetition, and a thick skin you've built layer by layer over the years. Your day doesn't allow for much self-care in the way modern people talk about it. But you've got your own system. First, the oil, then a few stretches to work out the sick in your back. Those rooms are too small for any real movement. And some of your clients like to throw their weight around, literally. You once had a blacksmith who insisted on lifting you like an amphora. Your shoulder still clicks when you rotate it. You fish around in the shared supply basket and find a stick of coal. It's blunt and sombre, but you darken your eyes with a practiced hand, squinting into a polished piece of bronze you call a mirror. It's warped and makes your face look wider than it is, but it'll do. You dab a little crushed rose petal on your wrist for scent. Not because clients expect it, but because it makes you feel marginally more human. Outside the Lupanar, the city is coming to life. Through the cracks in the door, you hear the rising murmur of the street. Fruit sellers calling out their prices, the rhythmic clack of sandals on stone, the occasional shriek of a vendor being shorted. It's oddly comforting, predictable even. Inside, the Lupanar has its own rhythm. Grinny IA is still counting coins. Maripi is already on her third client. Someone else, not sure who, just threw up behind the pillar in the atrium. Again, there's no breakfast per se, just whatever you can find or steal. Someone passes you half a fig and a chunk of coarse bread. You nibble it, try not to think about where the bread came from or how long it's been sitting out. Wine might help, but it's too early to be blurry, and you prefer to save the buzz for after the sun goes down. And now it's time. You hear the footsteps before you see him. Another client. This one looks cleaner, better dressed. Not rich, but not starving either. His tunic is neatly belted. His sandals newish. He asks for you by name. Your work name, not your real one. The one you scrolled in charcoal above your room. Felicia means lucky. Ironic. You never liked it, but it's stuck now like a second skin. You lead him to the room. Keep the small talk minimal. He's chatty. Wants to know if you're from here, which is code for you foreign and exotic enough to justify my interest. You lie. Tell him you were born near Capua. Sounds far enough to be interesting, but close enough to be plausible. He nods like he cares. He doesn't. He leaves quickly, tossing 2 more asses into the basket, and you breathe a little easier. That's 4 for the morning, and the sun's barely moved. If things keep up, you might be able to buy a full meal tonight. Maybe even some dried dates. You wander towards the common room. Brynea eyes your basket, then your face. You pay? She asks, always direct. Do you? You nod. She grunts approval. She's been working this Lupanar longer than anyone, and somehow she's managed to buy her own freedom. Rumor has it she still works out of choice, though nobody really believes that. What else is? She's wiping sweat from her neck and trying to brush sand off her feet. Guess who I just had? She says, and you raise an eyebrow. She grins. A baker's apprentice. Couldn't stop talking about flour. Said my thighs reminded him of kneaded dough. You groan. Did you throw something at him? Nah, she shrugs. He tipped me extra. Said I was fresh from the oven. You both laugh until your stomach hurts. But then Marcia leans in, lowers her voice. Did you hear about the linen trick? You pause. The one with wine. No, this is new, she says. Linen soaked in olive oil, wool, tied at the base. Supposed to prevent seed from taking root. You blink. That sounds messy. She shrugs again. Better than nothing. And then, as if reading your mind, she adds, you try anything right now? You hesitate. Timing. She nods like that makes sense. It doesn't. But what else can you do? The options are limited and all of them are rumors. No one really knows what works. You just try everything once and hope the gods are in a good mood. And then there's the topic no one wants to say aloud. What happens if it doesn't work? The whispered names of women who disappeared after a visit to an herbalist. A late-night knock on a midwife's door. Blood on the floor the next day. No one ever asks questions, and no one ever answers them. You've seen a girl walk in pale and trembling and come out 4 hours later looking hollow. You want to believe she just had a headache. You know better. You get up to stretch and shake off the unease, heading toward the back hallway for some air. The brothel has a narrow inner courtyard, really just a stone rectangle with a fig tree planted awkwardly in the middle. The figs are sour and half-rotted, but the leaves provide a sliver of shade. You lean against the wall and close your eyes. The hum of flies is steady, hypnotic. Somewhere nearby, someone is singing, soft, tuneless, and slightly off-key. A strange rumor has been making the rounds among the girls. Someone claimed to have seen a man at the baths wearing a linen sheath. Not a rumor you usually hear from the men's side of things. Apparently, it was tied with a leather strap, and he boasted it was from Egypt. You don't know whether to laugh or believe it. You've heard crazier things. Some say the Egyptians were better at this kind of thing, that they had all sorts of birth control methods centuries before Rome even built its first aqueduct. Maybe it's true. You wish someone would bring you a scroll or two, actual knowledge written down instead of all these passed-down half-truths wrapped in old cloth. As the afternoon wears on, the foot traffic slows. This is the lull. The heat is at its worst, and even the most eager clients need a moment to nap or drink or shout at their slaves. The girls retreat to corners and cushions, fanning themselves with anything they can find. You sit near the entrance, watching the street through a crack in the wooden door. A cart rolls by, pulled by a pair of oxen. Children run behind it, trying to snatch falling fruit. A man hawks amulets to ward off impotence. Another sells spiced wine from a jug with flies floating in the neck. Life goes on. You think about the girl in the corner room again. The cough, the silence. You want to go check on her, but you don't. There's a line between concern and self-preservation, and you've learned to stay on the right side of it. You light a bit of incense instead, murmur if you're lucky, and murmur a quick prayer to Venus. Not for yourself this time, for her and for the rest of you. That the cough stay quiet, that the linen tricks work, that the vigils take their coin and leave. Fun historical fact. The Romans didn't just leave contraception to whispers and wishful thinking. They wrote about it. Authors like Serenus suggested everything from plant-based pessaries to coitus interruptus. He even recommended timing sex to avoid pregnancy, a system that modern science has since confirmed is deeply unreliable. But it was knowledge written, copied, shared, a glimmer of science in a world otherwise ruled by guesses and prayers. Fringe fact for you. Some people believe the Romans invented an early version of the condom, not from animal intestines like later civilizations, but from linen soaked in various mixtures. Some were tied on, others inserted. Whether they worked, that's anyone's guess. The archaeological record is mostly silent on that point. Linen doesn't preserve well over 2,000 years. And here's your open debate. Did Roman men ever regularly use protection? Or was that idea mostly projected backward by modern historians looking for signs of civilization in all the wrong places? Some scholars argue men preferred natural methods, pulling out herbal drinks or nothing at all. Others think there was a small elite market for sheaths and infusions, probably among those who could afford midwives and scribes to keep track of cycles. You sigh and push off the wall. The lull is ending. The sun is lower now, angling across the floor in golden stripes. Time to start preparing for the evening wave. You adjust your tunic, rub a little more oil into your skin, and step back inside. The cough comes again. You don't turn your head. The sunlight slants differently now, heavier and redder as it filters through the alleyways and slips between the uneven stones of the Lupanar's entrance. It's the signal all of you have been waiting for. The subtle shift from afternoon lethargy to early evening promise. This is when the day starts to stretch itself again. When the merchants are heading home, the soldiers are off duty, and the men who didn't dare sneak out earlier finally build up the courage. You can feel it in the energy of the place. Girls smoothing their tunics, reapplying pigment to their cheeks, adjusting the pins in their hair with desperate hope that one good client might turn the whole day around. But instead of prepping for the next round, you're stuck in a debate. One of those never quite resolved conversations that's half about politics, half about identity, and entirely about the twisted concept of freedom in your line of work. The trigger this time is Nissa, who just finished with a merchant's son and came out glowing. He paid triple, gave her a fig cake, and told her she deserved better. Now she's ranting. "I'm not a slave," she says, pacing near the fountain. "I signed a contract. I can leave whenever I want." She says it loud enough for the girls in the back room to hear. They don't respond. Marcia chimes in from a low bench. "But you don't leave," she says, casually peeling a grape. "So how free are you really?" The words hang in the air, sweet and sharp. Nissa glares. "I choose to stay." "That's different." You're tempted to jump in, but you've had this exact conversation before, just with different names and slightly different bruises. You say nothing. The truth is messier than either of them will admit. Some of you are slaves, yes, owned outright, bought for pleasure and labor, no illusion of choice. Others, like you are technically free, which mostly means your name isn't on someone else's property list, but your options are still boxed in by poverty, gender, and the invisible weight of social stain. You're stuck in a web spun by economics, not chains. Can you walk out the front door? Sure. Will you get a job in a respectable household afterward? Not a chance. The moment you work here, you're branded, not with iron, maybe, but with reputation, which is harder to scrub off. You retreat from the debate before it turns sour. You head toward your room, dodging a drunk who's already taken off one sandal and is singing to himself in Greek. You pretend not to hear. The doorframe of your room has fresh carvings on it. Someone has scratched a crude heart around the name Felicia, followed by what looks like the Latin abbreviation for good lay. You groan and mentally add it to the list of things you can't unsee. Inside, you sit on the edge of the pallet and stretch your legs out, rotating your ankles until the joints pop. Your feet ache. The soles are dirty. Your right sandal strap is frayed. You make a note to find a new pair before Saturnalia, or hope a generous client gets the hint. Maybe that banker who always compliments your calves. You've only been sitting a moment when there's a tap at the doorframe. Light but deliberate. You look up and see a face you haven't seen in weeks. Tertius, the senatorial aide who always arrives robed, veiled, and fidgeting like a boy stealing sweets. He's clearly trying not to be recognized, even though you know his voice, his shape, even the way he breathes when nervous. "Felicia," he whispers, as if saying your name louder might invoke a curse. You nod, welcoming him in with a gesture. He hesitates before stepping inside, glancing behind him like someone might leap out from behind a pillar. Shouting caught you. You resist the urge to laugh. It's always the well-dressed ones who panic the most. He settles into the ongoing scholarly shrug, whether brothel, like the Lupanar, ever became informal advice centers for upper-class women. It sounds absurd, but there are fragments of letters, satire, and graffiti that suggest a handful of noble women-formed relationships, sometimes friendships with working girls. Was it common? Probably not. But in Rome, nothing is ever entirely forbidden, just expensive. You shift on the stone step, watching the sun begin to push away the shadows. Another day begins. The city awakens with the same hunger it always does. And you pull your shawl tighter and go back inside. The floor needs sweeping. The oil needs refilling. There's still work to do. You've barely stepped back inside when the smell hits you. Sweet, sharp, and earthy. Someone's lit incense. Not the cheap kind Leno uses to mask the scent of sweat and spilled wine, but something richer, almost ceremonial. Frankincense maybe, or MYR. That's not normal. You follow the scent to the small shrine tucked in the corner of the atrium. A little alcove where the girls make offerings when they're desperate, lucky, or both. The shrine is older than the building itself, dedicated to Venus, of course, and to Prius. That grinning, wide-eyed god with the oversized anatomy and unblinking gaze. His carved figure leans in the corner beside a soot-darkened wall. Red, painted phallus, still glossy from years of girls rubbing it for luck. Today, someone's gone all out. Fresh rose petals scattered on the ledge. A tiny clay cup filled with wine. 2 figs placed beside a lit taper. You glance around and spot Marcia near the basin, her eyes red, but her chin held high. She sees you looking and shrugs. I thought it couldn't hurt. You nod. Everyone understands what she means. Her belly isn't showing yet, but it will be soon. She's not pretending anymore. She's asking for a miracle or a midwife or maybe just a few weeks of peace. You walk over, pluck one of the petals from the ledge, and roll it between your fingers. You think Venus cares about girls like us? You ask. Marcia laughs bitter, but not mean. If she doesn't, we're all in the wrong profession. Fair enough. You drop the petal onto the offering dish and whisper a prayer. You don't even know what you're asking for anymore. Maybe just that today isn't worse than yesterday. The thing about Venus is that she isn't a goddess of comfort. She's a goddess of want. And that's what this business runs on. Not love, not need, want. It's what makes men hand over coins they can't afford. It's what brings senators into rooms that stink of mold and sweat. And it's what keeps you coming back, hoping each time for a little less pain, a little more dignity, and on the rarest days, maybe even kindness. A shout echoes from the front room. You both look up. Marape appears in the doorway, waving a scrap of cloth like a victory banner. Guess who finally paid up? She crows, holding a coin pouch. Took 2 threats and a broken stool, but he came through. You and Maria exchange a look. Marape is your patron saint of persistence. If someone owes her money, she'll either get it or make sure they wish they were dead. As the girls gather around her to hear the story, something about a sailor who claimed he lost his coin pouch in the bath. You step back toward your room. On the way, you pass the fresco again. The colors are fading. You've stared at them so many times, you've memorized every angle, every posture, every exaggerated smile. You used to find them ridiculous. Now they're more like a checklist. In your room, you relight your lamp, take a clean cloth, and wipe down the small wooden chest beside your bed. It's where you keep your extras, a worn-out comb, your last bit of eyeliner, and a tiny pouch of black salt brinier gave you for protection. She swears it wards off the evil eye. You don't believe it, but you haven't taken out of the pouch either. You fish through your belongings until you find the dried laurel's leaf you tucked away weeks ago. Still brittle, still whole, you slide it into the crack behind the bedpost, where it joins a growing collection of tiny nothings. Scraps of silk, a broken ring, a bead from a client's necklace. You're not sure why you keep them. Maybe they're anchors. Maybe you just don't like letting things vanish without a trace. A soft knock at your doorway breaks your thoughts. It's the new girl, Julia, you think, hovering like a sparrow caught indoors. She's got that wide-eyed look again, the one that says she hasn't yet accepted this place as permanent. Can I talk? She asks. You nod, gesturing for her to come in. She perches on the edge of the stool, fingers twisting in her lap. Is it always like this? She asks. The noise, the smell, the way they don't look at you after. You exhale. No, you say. Sometimes they look too long. She frowns. I thought it'd be easier after the first time, but it's not. You nod slowly. It gets easier to fake. That's not the same thing. She looks at you like she wants to cry, but her eyes are dry. Do you remember your first? She asks. You do too? Well, You were younger than Julia. The man was older, polite, and tried too hard to be gentle, which somehow made it worse. You remember the way he touched your face afterward and said, "You're going to be very popular." You didn't speak for the rest of the night. Brina sat with you, didn't say anything, just sat. "Yeah," you finally say. "I remember." Julia wraps her arms around her knees. "What if I can't do it?" "Then you don't," you reply. You take what coin you've made and vanish before the Leno figures it out. She shakes her head. "I don't have anywhere to go." "Neither did I," you say. "Still don't. But I'm still here." She leaves a few minutes later, face blank. You hope she either gets used to this life or find a way out fast. Getting stuck in between. That's the worst fate. It's like trying to breathe in syrup. You lie back down, not to sleep, but to close your eyes and drift for a while. You listen to the murmur of voices through the thin walls. Someone laughs. Someone else sobs. You hear the rustle of cloth, the creak of a mattress, the hiss of wine being poured into a cracked cup. It's a lullaby you've heard 1,000 times, and you still can't decide if it's comforting or unbearable. Your history dropped for this section. The cult of Prius, often paired with Venus in brothel shrines, was as vulgar as it was devotional. Prius was the protector of gardens, fertility, and less glamorously, boundary stones. His statues were placed at entrances, not just for blessings, but to warn off thieves and bad luck. In brothel, he served as both joke and guardian, a reminder of what you sold and who you prayed wouldn't ruin you. Fringe detail. Some shrines had curses carved into the base, warnings to those who dared harm the women inside. May his member wither, one reads, if he leaves without paying. You always liked that one. And the scholarly dispute whether these shrines were truly spiritual or just superstitious theater. Were they expressions of faith or tools of comfort in a world that offered you none? No one agrees. Some think the offerings were just habit like knocking wood. Others argue they were lifelines, a way to feel seen by something, anything, even a grinning stone god with an oversized phallus. You roll over, pressing your cheek into the woven cloth of your pillow. The incense has faded now, but the hope it brought lingers a little longer. The heat doesn't break. Even deep in the night, the lupin holds onto the warmth like a fever dream. The walls sweat with you. The stone floor sticks to bare feet. The air is too thick to move through without feeling it curl inside your lungs. You sit on your mattress, fan yourself lazily with a strip of parchment someone abandoned, and listen to the muted clatter of a dispute echoing through the hallway. It's not loud enough to get involved yet, but it's coming to a boil. You can hear it in the pitch. Two women-sharp words slicing at each other, punctuated by the deeper rumble of a man trying to mediate and failing miserably. And then someone shouts your name. Not the soft, seductive Felicia that gets whispered in doorways. This is a bark. Get in here. It's Brynea. You groan, dragging yourself up and out into the corridor like someone reporting from military duty. The scene is just outside Mariep's room. She's standing nose to nose with Nisa. Both girls red-faced and furious. Between them stands a client, wide-eyed, shirtless, and clutching his sandals like he regrets every life decision he's ever made. She stole him, Nissa spits, arms crossed tight enough to squeeze blood from stone. He asked for me, and she dragged him into her room. I offered him a discount. Mariep fires back, smiling through her teeth, which is not against the rules. Nissa turns to Briner. She undercaught me. That's against every rule. Brina sigh, pinching the bridge of her nose. Felicia, she says, gesturing. You're neutral. What do we do? Adim is. You rub your temples, aware that every second you spend playing brothel judge is a second you're not sleeping or earning. Let me talk to the client, you mutter. The man blinks at you, sweaty and caught in the middle like a lamb. Between two hungry dogs. Who did you ask for? You ask gently. I thought Nisa, he says, then flinches as Mariep scoffs. But she said she'd do it for half. You nod. Okay, next time pick a room and stick with it. He nods like a child being scolded for stealing figs. You look back at the girls. He's not worth it, you say. If you're fighting over clients who pay half, you're both losing. That seems to deflate them more than anything else. Brynea gives you a nod, satisfied, and shoos them off in opposite Doris. The client gets pushed into Merope's room, still clutching his sandals like they might save him. You return to your own space, dragging a stool in front of the door just to keep people from barging in again. Not that it'll stop them. Privacy here is a suggestion, not a law. You sit back down and stare at the small bronze mirror, tilting it until it catches the lamp's flickering glow. Your reflection looks tired. Not set, just used. Like furniture that's seen too many years and too few repairs. This job is full of rivalries. You're not surprised when every coin matters and every man might be your next meal ticket. The women here can turn on each other fast. The ones are friends until one of them gets offered an extra denarius. The others don't bother pretending to get along at all. You manage to stay neutral, mostly by staying useful. You patch tunics. You remember names. You say the right thing at the right time. People like having you around, even if they never say it. But even you have your limits. There are days when you want to scream. Days when someone takes your comb or borrows your oil and never returns it. Days when a client leaves bruises and Brina shrugs and says, "That's the business." You haven't lost your temper yet, but you've come close. A soft knock at your door pulls you from your thoughts. Not a client, just the rhythm tells you that. You open it a crack and find Marcia standing there looking sheepish. "Can I sleep here tonight?" she asks. "Yeah," is still throwing things. You sigh and gesture her in. She curls up at the end of your mattress without another word. Like a child too tired to explain why she's scared. You lie beside her, staring at the ceiling. "You ever think about leaving?" you ask. She nods, eyes closed all the time. "And don't know where I'd go." You understand. You've thought about running, too. You even have a fantasy. Slipping onto a cart headed north. Finding a saw in a town where no one knows you. Working as a barmaid or even a washwoman. Something less humiliating. But then you remember what it took to survive here. How much coin it takes just to eat, to sleep, to stay safe. Out there, you'd be alone. At least here you know the rules. You shift to get more comfortable, brushing against the edge of your wooden chest. It rattles softly, and you remember the coins. You still have that little stash. 3 gold array. Enough to get you out. Maybe if you left tonight and didn't look back and you don't move. Here's your historical tidbit. Female rivalry in Roman brothel wasn't just personal. It was often survival. There are scraps of legal documents and graffiti that hint at competition between prostitutes. Sometimes violent fights over clients, territory, or even names. Some girls had to brand themselves, literally, just to mark their identity. Others relied on tattoos, jewelry, or even distinct perfumes to stand out. You've heard of one girl who used powdered lead to whiten their skin, giving them the pale, luminous look of statues, which of course also slowly poisoned them. Lips were colored with crushed mulberries, nails stained with rust or ochre, and teeth sometimes. Sometimes it's vulnerability, sometimes rage, sometimes just sadness wrapped in bravado. He doesn't undress fully, just pulls up his tunic and leans back on your bed like it's his. He doesn't ask your name. He knows it already, but he does ask questions, oddly enough. "How long have you worked here?" "A few years," you lie. "Do you like it?" "No one likes it." "Fair." He pauses. "You're always this quiet. Only with the ones who don't tip." That gets a laugh and then a coin tossed your way. Silver. Not bad. You catch it, bite it lightly, and smile without warmth. It's going to be a long hour. The session is easy enough. He's more talk than action, more show than substance. Afterward, he lies there for a while, staring at the wall like he's hoping it will answer something. You know, he says, "My father used to come here or somewhere like here. That's how I knew about this place." You say nothing. He keeps going. "I used to think it was disgusting that he was a monster, but now I get it." You raise an eyebrow. You just needed to experience it for yourself. "I needed to know why he chose this over home." You don't answer. That's not your job. You let him sit with it. Eventually, he stands, swoos his tunic, and leaves without another word. You close the curtain behind him and sit down hard. Some nights are physically exhausting. Others feel like emotional grave robbing. When you step into the hallway again, you hear laughter. Real, unguarded laughter. A is standing near the common room with one of the kitchen boys, grinning, cheeks flushed. "What's going on?" You ask. "He told me I don't look like a prostitute," she says, still giggling. "That I look like a priestess." You smirk. Same thing sometimes. She beams, radiant in a way that won't last but is nice to see. He said I should charge double. Did you? Of course. Brinia brushes past, grumbling. Keep laughing like that. Someone will think you're enjoying yourself. You lean against the wall and watch as the night unfolds. The doors open and close. Coins clink into bowls. Wine spills. A girl vomits in a basin. Someone breaks a stool. The usual. You go through 2 more clients before the bells chime for midnight. One is gentle but boring. The other is so drunk you have to hold him upright. Neither leaves much behind except for the sour scent of regret and a few crumpled copper coins. You retreat to the back near the garden courtyard and breathe in the night air. Smells like wet dust and old fig leaves. Marape joins you, wiping her mouth with a damp cloth. I had a guy ask if I could sing, she mutters. Try to turn the whole thing into a musical. You laugh. Did you? Yeah. I sang about his tiny underscorners where you snort so hard it hurts your ribs. Historical detail of the night. Evening was always the busiest time for brothel in ancient Rome. After the markets closed and the business ended, men had fewer eyes watching and more wine in their bellies. That's when the Lupanars lit up, sometimes literally with torches placed outside to signal availability. Some brothel even stayed open all night, their doors marked by symbolic images, pine cones, fall aces, lamps, fringe fact. Some clients came in pairs or groups, not always for orgies, but sometimes just to share the experience. There are graffiti in Pompeii that read like Yelp reviews from ancient frat boys. I came with Cato and Lucius. Great time, 2 for 1. Whether they were joking or just that comfortable is unclear, probably both. In the scholar tug of war, whether nighttime visits were considered more shameful than daytime ones. Some believe night meant secrecy, indulgence, loss of control. Or others think night visits were simply practical, easier to sneak away from duties, spouses, or senatorial meetings. In any case, the night belonged to you and them and every unsaid thing they brought with them. Back in your room, you lie down fully clothed, too tired to clean up, too wired to sleep. Your skin smells like other people. Your muscles hum with repetition, but your eyes are open, staring at the cracked fresco above the bed. 2 lovers frozen mid-motion, and their faces wiped clean by time. You close your eyes. You dream of silence. You don't wake, so much has come back to the surface. Sleep in this place never feels like real rest. More like dipping under, hiding for a while, then surfacing again into the same air. Same stone, same weight in your chest. The morning's already begun without you. You hear the familiar shuffle of sandals on stone, water being poured into a basin, a short scream of frustration that's probably Brinia chasing rats again. One of the girls hums softly from down the hall. You can't tell who. Maybe Julia. Her voice always wavers like she's trying to remember a song her mother used to sing. You sit up slowly. Your back cracks. Your mouth tastes like regret and stale wine. You slept in your tunic again, and now it clings to your skin with a faint sourness you don't bother trying to identify. You pour a little water from your jug into a cloth and wipe your face, wincing at the cold. No clients yet, no knocks, just the early lull, that fragile pocket of calm before the city starts grinding its gears. The mirror from the senator's wife, the silver one, sits untouched under your mattress. You haven't used it, haven't even unwrapped it since that night. But you think about it every morning like today. You reach for it slowly, pulling back the cloth and holding the mirror up toward the low, dusty light. It's beautiful. Dinted at the rim, yes, but elegant in a way nothing else you own is. You tilt it, catching your reflection. You almost look like a stranger. The makeup's mostly faded, the dark smudges under your eyes deepening into shadows of their own. Your hair's come loose, curling around your ears in tired, uneven waves. There's a faint bruise at your collarbone. Last night's souvenir. You look older today. Not ancient, just worn, like a wall fresco that's seen too many torch flames. You wrap the mirror again and tuck it away. Down the hall, a voice calls out, "Felicia, visitor." You groan. It's too early for this. You throw on your cleaner shawl, cleaner being relative, and head to the front room. It's not a client. It's a boy, 10, maybe 11, holding a scroll in both hands and sweating like someone dropped him in a furnace. "Are you Felicia?" he asks, eyes wide. You nod. "Message." He holds it out like it might bite you. You take the scroll, untie the string. The wax seal is unmarked. Plain, no crest. That's unusual. You open it and read, "Tomorrow noon, bathhouse of Julia Felix, private room, come alone." No name, no reason, just that. You look at the boy. Who sent this? He shrugs. A woman, tall, war green. Not helpful. You toss him a coin anyway, and he runs off like a lizard in sandals. You reread the note. Bathhouse of Julia Felix. That's not a place for people like you. It's where respectable women go. The ones with stolers and servants and opinions they whisper in marble courtyards. You've heard of it. Luxury baths, quiet pools, perfumed steam, and real towels. Not the communal wash basins and mildew slick floors you're used to. You once saw a magistrate's wife disappear behind its doors like a queen entering a temple. Why are you being summoned there? You fold the note and stuff it into your waistband. You say nothing to Brynea. She wouldn't stop you, but she'd ask questions. You're not ready for those. Instead, you spend the day working. 2 clients before noon, both forgettable. One keeps calling you Olivia and apologizes every time. The other asks you to describe how it feels to be watched. You lie, obviously. Okay, but you do it with flair. He gives you an extra coin. You wash quickly, change into your cleanest tunic, still plain, but not threadbare, and wrap yourself in a cloak that hides more than it reveals. You pull your hair back tight, twist it into something close to a style you've seen rich women wear. It doesn't hold well, but it's good enough for passing glances. When you arrive at Julia Felix's bathhouse, you hesitate at the gate. The outer wall is smooth white stone, clean and painted with delicate ivy patterns. There's no sign, but you don't need one. The guards nod as you approach, though their eyes linger. You look out of place, and they know it. Still, they say nothing. One leads you inside. It's beautiful, quiet but alive. Fountains trickle. Warm air hugs your skin. The walls gleam with polished mosaics. Peacocks, dolphins, scenes of sea foam, and wind-tossed robes. The floor beneath your sandals is smooth, cool. You feel like you're stepping into a painting. A servant meets you in the corridor, says nothing, and leads you to a side room. Inside, cushions, a small fountain, a low table set with olives and dried dates. And her, the woman in green. She's older than you, maybe in her 40s, with silver threaded in her black braid and rings on every finger. She gestures to the cushions. You sit. "Thank you for coming," she says. Her voice is calm, deliberate, educated. "I didn't know I had a choice." She smiles, not unkindly. "That's fair. Do you know who I am?" You shake your head. "I'm Vivia Saya. My husband sits on the local council." You keep your expression still. "I've heard of you," she continues, "from more than one person. You have a reputation." You listen. You wait. "I need someone to help me learn what men want, and not in the way you're thinking." Now you speak. "You want blackmail?" She laughs. "I want leverage. There's a difference." You fold your hands in your lap. "And you think I'm your way in." She meets your gaze. "You're invisible, Felicia. That's what makes you dangerous. No one sees you, but you see everything." You don't answer. She reaches into her satchel and pulls out a pouch. 10 denarii now. 10 more if you return tomorrow with information. I want to know what my husband says when he thinks no one's listening. You take the pouch. It's heavy. You leave the bathhouse with your heart beating faster than it has in weeks. Historical detail for this chapter. Elite Roman women were not powerless, but their power came through indirect means. They weren't allowed in the Senate or courts, but they controlled households, alliances, and sometimes through webs of gossip and servants, entire political careers. Many had their own networks, slaves, freed women, even prostitutes who fed them information others dismissed. Fringe fact, there's evidence that some brothel doubled as intelligence hubs, not by accident, but design. Prostitutes heard confessions, pillow talk, political whispers. Some even sold that information to senators' wives or their rivals. Rome ran on secrets, and secrets had a price. Academic debate. Whether these women were just lucky opportunists or deliberate agents of influence. Some historians credit them with subtle but significant shifts in power. Others argue that stories like Vibia Severa's are anomalies, not patterns. But the fact remains in Rome, silence was currency, and you've just been paid to spend it. As you re-enter the Lupanar, you tuck the coin pouch deep under your tunic. Tomorrow you'll become something else, not just Felicia, a spy. You don't sleep that night, not properly. You lie down, sure, and close your eyes, but your mind keeps rolling through questions with no good answers. What exactly does Vivia Syra want? What will her husband say that she doesn't already know? And why you? You're not a trained spy. You're a prostitute with sore feet and a memory that holds more secrets than names. But maybe that's what makes you useful. By dawn, you've decided you'll go back. 10 denarii is too much to ignore. And if you play this right, there could be more. Maybe enough to finally get out of this place. You've always said you wouldn't leave unless you had somewhere better to go. Maybe this is your opening. You rise quietly, stepping over Maria's sleeping form. She's curled up again in your corner, belly heavier now. You brush a lock of hair from her face and whisper, "Still here," just to reassure yourself. You wash up fast, use the last of your wine as a rinse, and apply a little kohl around your eyes. Not much, just enough to sharpen your edges. You wear the same tunic from yesterday, now scrubbed, and wrap yourself again in that cloak that makes you look more than what you are. Outside, the city is already moving. Vendors shouting, carts creaking, someone arguing loudly with a goat that won't move. You slip through the streets like a shadow. No one looks too long. No one stops you. You're becoming good at that, being there without being seen. At the bathhouse, a different servant greets you. Male, silent, expressionless. He nods and gestures toward the inner hall, then leaves you to find your own way. You walk the same path as yesterday, but it feels different now, heavier, like the air itself knows something's changed. You reach the same room, step through the veil, and there she is, Vivia, sitting cross-legged in a chair shaped like a half-shell, dressed in a new gown, this one wine red and embroidered with birds. She gestures to a stool. "You came," she says. "Of course, and you'll get your answers," you reply. "But first, we need rules." She raises an eyebrow. "Rules? I tell you what I hear, but I don't tell you who told me. I don't put other girls in danger. And I never follow anyone. I don't spy. I listen." "Fair," she says, then smiles slightly. "You're better at this than most senators." You hand her a folded scrap of parchment. On it, 3 names. Men you overheard in your hallway just last night, talking too loud after too much wine. You jotted down the details in your head. One discussing a loan he shouldn't have taken. Another admitting he voted against his patron in the last election. And the third, Vivia's husband, drunkenly bragging about a land grab involving falsified temple records. It's not much, but it's enough. She reads quickly, her expression unreadable. Then she folds the paper and tucks it into her sleeve. "Excellent," she murmurs. "This would do." You get up to leave, but she stops you with a question. "What do you want, Felicia?" You pause. The usual answer is coin. That's the safe answer. But something about her calm, her eyes, the way she says your name like it's worth something, makes you risk honesty. "I want out not just to the brothel of all of it." She nods, thoughtful. "Then let's make this more than one night." And just like that, you're someone else. Not just a body in a bed, not just a name on a wax tablet. You're a woman with information, a broker, a risk. Back at the Lupanar, you don't tell anyone where you were. You return quietly, as though you just went to piss and took your time. You pass Brynia on the way in. She gives you a look, curious, suspicious, but doesn't stop you. You've earned that much space, and you return to work. 3 clients in the afternoon. One asks to be slapped. One wants to be sung, too. One just cries in your lap for 15 minutes and then leaves without touching you. You don't ask why. You never ask why. Between clients, you write down what you hear. Not everything, just the important pieces, like who's arguing with who's paying more than usual, which girl has the senator's nephew in her room every Tuesday. You don't tell Vivia any of that yet. You're building leverage of your own. If this turns sideways, you'll need it. Historical detail. It wasn't uncommon for brothel in Rome to function as informal information exchanges. With so many men letting their guards down in intimate moments, prostitutes became walking archives. Some kept mental tallies of names, secrets, alliances. In rare cases, they passed that knowledge to women of higher rank, wives, mistresses, sometimes even enemies. Fringe fact, there's a legend about a prostitute and Capuer who blackmailed a wealthy merchant for years just by pretending to know things about his business dealings. She didn't actually know anything. She just guessed well, kept quiet, and let his guilt do the work. She ended up with a villa on the coast. Scholarly debate whether the role of prostitutes in Roman political life has been overstated or undervalued. Some argue they were simply vessels for male confession, walls to whisper at. Others suggest they were active agents in shaping decisions, especially when paired with intelligent patrons. The truth probably lies somewhere between. Not powerless, not all-powerful, just sharp enough to survive with a blade made of words. As night falls, you slip outside to the courtyard where Ayler is sitting cross-legged on the rim of the fountain, humming again. She looks up when you approach. "You were gone," she says. "Just for a bit." "Where to?" You smile. "A bath," she grins. "Was a good one. The best I've had in years." She leans back and stares at the stars, which blink faintly above the roofline. "Sometimes I think I'll disappear one day. Just vanish like steam off a cup." "We all do," you say. "So just take longer." Inside, the oil lamps flicker low. The hallway smells of beeswax, sweat, and too many promises made too easily. You slip back into your room, close the curtain, and light your own lamp. The flame dances. You open your secret pouch and count your coins again. More than yesterday. Still not enough. But now you have something more than money. You have worth. Not just to the men who buy you, to the ones who fear you. You're sitting at the edge of the courtyard, carving tiny grooves into a piece of wood with the end of a broken hairpin, when you hear the slap of sandals approaching fast. The sound is different from the usual, more urgent, less performative. You look up just as Brynier storms around the corner, her shawl half slipping from one shoulder, face set in a kind of angry panic. "Where were you last night?" She snaps. You blink slow and careful here. It's not a lie. You did return eventually. She stares at you, eyes sharp and unblinking. "Someone saw you leave. Said you were dressed like a freed woman." You go to the baths, still calm. "I needed a proper wash." "With whose money?" "Client paid for it." Also not a lie. Brinny exhales through her nose. She doesn't like not knowing things. She runs this place like a merchant's ledger. Every girl, every coin, every detail filed and known. Your movements are usually predictable. When they're not, she notices. "No secrets," you warns, voice low. "You know, that's how we stay safe." You nod. "I'm not keeping secrets. I'm just keeping options." Her jaw tenses. Then she nods once and walks off. But you know that look, she's not done with you. She's just shelving it for now. Back in your room, you sit with your back to the wall and try to make sense of the shifting weight inside your chest. You've always played by the house's rules. Never loudly, never blindly, but enough to avoid conflict. Now you're not just dancing on the edge of them. You're stepping clean off. You pull out the silver mirror and study your face. It's become a ritual. This check-in with the reflection you don't entirely trust. Something about your eyes has changed. Not just tiredness, though. That's there always. But a kind of alertness, too. A readiness. You're not entirely who you were 3 weeks ago. Your second meeting with Vivia takes place that evening in the private courtyard behind the bathhouse. There's a pergola covered in flowering vines and a stone bench shaped like a serpent. The torchlight is low. She doesn't sit this time. She's pacing. "I need more," she says as soon as you arrive. "Something useful, political. Do you know of any affairs?" You raise a brow. "You mean besides the dozens happening in the Lupanar every week?" She's not amused. "My husband's taken aside in something he shouldn't have. There's talk of money missing from the temple fund. If I had proof, I could protect our estate." You lean back against a pillar, and if you don't get proof, then I watch everything burn while pretending to drink wine. You nod slowly. "I'll see what I can find." She hands you a pouch. More denarii. You don't count it in front of her. That's part of the deal now. Trust wrapped in a performance neither of you fully believe in. Back at the brothel, you listen harder than usual. Your ears pick up more now. Not just words, but tone, hesitation, breath. You begin charting which clients return, which speak in half sentences, which drink too much before letting something slip. One man complains about temple taxes being diverted to private homes. Another boasts about buying a plot of land that wasn't really for sale. You memorize every detail. Then one night, you catch a break. The client is a mid-level magistrate with wine breath and a bad temper. He insists on talking during the entire session, complaining about the city, his rivals, and most importantly, the recent construction work being funded quietly with public money. He names names, and one of them is Vivia's husband. You don't react. You just nod along, make the right noises, and file it away. Later, you write it down on a strip of linen and hide it beneath a loose brick in your room. Marcia finds you there, crouched on the floor, brushing them dust from your knees. You're hiding something, she says, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. You got that look. What look? The one we get right before we stop being one of them. You don't answer. She walks away. Historical detail. Mid-level Roman politicians were often corrupt, not because the system was broken, but because it was designed that way. Favors, bribes, and personal gifts funded everything from aqueduct repairs to religious festivals. Prostitution, though technically beneath them, was often where they let their tongues slip. Nothing makes a man more honest than his own arrogance. Fringe fact, huh? In one recorded case, a prostitute in Bayer overheard a conversation between two senators plotting to defund a rival's temple. She reported it anonymously by scratching the details onto a wall near the forum. The scandal exploded within days. No one ever found out who she was. Scholarly debate whether the intelligence passed through brothel had real political impact or whether it was just gossip disguised as danger. Some argue these secrets rarely reached beyond pillow talk. Others insist brothel were early intelligence hubs, unofficial but crucial. Either way, Rome's power structures weren't just built in marble halls. They were whispered into the shadows, traded over bodies and candles and coin. You deliver the information to Vibia 2 days later. She reads it with a blank face, then nods once and says, "This will do. You've just saved my estate." You don't ask how. You don't ask what comes next. But later that week, one of the magistrates you named is arrested for misappropriation of sacred funds. You hear the news while you're oiling your legs. Verena mutters about it while chewing dates. She doesn't look at you while she says it, but you feel her gaze afterward. And for the first time, you realize someone's watching you now. Not as a girl in a brothel. There's something else. And maybe that's more dangerous than anything you've done so far. There's a knock at your door that's not really a knock, just a hesitant brush of knuckles followed by silence. You pause mid-comb, fingers tangled in your hair, and call out, "Come in." The curtain parts, and Marcia steps through, looking older than she did just 2 weeks ago. Not just tired, age like the weight of something invisible has sunk down into her bones. She doesn't speak at first, just stands there, arms crossed under her chest, eyes fixed on the floor. Finally, she says, "I'm leaving." You blink. "What?" "I'm going north," she murmurs, "to stay with my aunt. She has a farm. It's small, but she said I could help with the goats." You set the comb down carefully, and the baby, she touches her stomach. It's hers now. She always wanted a daughter. She says she won't ask questions. You nod slowly, the words taking a moment to settle. When? Tomorrow, before sunrise. She looks up. Brina doesn't know. You want to protest, not because it's wrong, but because it's sudden, and you've come to rely on her presence, her grumbling, her honesty, her occasional quiet laughter, when something in the world tilts absurdly enough to warrant it. You thought she'd be around, that maybe the two of you would figure out a way out together someday. But here she is, packing up before dawn like a fugitive from her own past. "I stole bread," she says as if confessing. "And oil, don't tell." You smile faintly. "I'll miss you." "No, you won't," she says. "You'll be busy turning into someone important." She walks over, presses something into your hand. A small ring, iron, set with a bit of red glass. "For luck," she says. "It's fake. I know." When she's gone, you sit on your cot and stare at the ring in your palm. It's cheap, chipped, clearly from a vendor stall. But do you curl your fingers around it like it's sacred? You don't sleep much that night. Just lie there and listen to the sounds of the brothel. Laughter, moaning, footsteps, someone vomiting in the courtyard, the usual soundtrack of other people's choices. Before dawn, you creep to the back hall and watch through the cracks in the gate as Marcia slips into the street, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, belly hidden, steps swift. You don't wave. She doesn't look back. You wonder if she'll make it. The rest of the day feels different. Not because it's quieter. It isn't, but because everything's shifted a degree sideways. Aya is tense. She's begun limping slightly, favoring her right side. You ask if she's all right. She shrugs. Rough night, big client. You don't press. You've had your share of those. Brinier, though, is watching you more closely. She calls you into the side room after your third client, a soldier with more scars than teeth, and leans against the doorway, arms crossed. You've been busy, she says. Haven't left the loop in that much, you reply. That's the thing, she mutters. You don't have to. The girls talk, the clients talk, and somehow you always know things before me. You keep your face neutral. I listen well. Too well, she says. Tell me this. Are you working for someone else now? You hold her gaze, not against you. She nods once slowly, then walks over and sits beside you. I should have pulled you in months ago, she says. Used you better. You're smart. Smarter than me, probably. But you're playing a game now, and games have rules. If you break them, people get hurt. You nod. I know. She stands. If you're going to keep collecting secrets, at least bring some to me. You owe me that. You don't disagree. That night, Vibia doesn't summon you. You're relieved. You need space, time to think. So, you do what you haven't done in weeks. You walk the city. Not far, just far enough. Past the bakery, where they burn the crust just right. Past the fountain with the chipped nymph, where someone always leaves a fresh figure. You end up at the Temple of Fortuna, not to pray, just to look. The flames flicker behind the grating. You think of Marcia, of her face disappearing into darkness. You whisper, let her make it. No one answers, of course. You return to the Lupanar and find Aya crying softly in the laundry room. She's clutching a bloodied rag and rocking back and forth. You crouch beside her. What happened? He didn't stop. She whispers. I said no. I said it hurt. Your hand ball into fists. Brinia said he's rich. Important that I should have just been quiet. You help her clean up. You bring her to your room and let her sleep on your cot. You stand guard at the curtain all night, arms crossed, eyes burning. Morning comes, and the city keeps moving indifferent as always. Historical truth. Roman prostitutes had no protection from assault, even when registered. They were considered infames, a legal term meaning their testimony didn't hold up in court. Once marked as such, you could be beaten, raped, or even killed without the same consequences that would follow if you were a respectable woman. Your body became property, open, disposable. Fringe fact, some women got tattoos not just to mark themselves as property of a brothel, but as warnings, symbols inked into the wrist or inner arm that read, do not harm. It didn't always work, but it was a form of protest, no protest, however small. In the scholarly debate, was there any legal path for a prostitute to seek justice? Some claim exceptions existed if a client was a slave, or if the girl was underage, or if the violence disrupted public order. Others argue the law never truly applied to women like you. You existed in a gray space, regulated, taxed, but never protected. You sit with Aya as she sleeps. You rub your thumb over the fake ruby in Marcia's ring, and you make a decision. Vibia wants political secrets. Fine, but you're going to start collecting a different kind of power. The kind that doesn't beg senators for mercy. The kind that burns down the whole rotten house from the inside. The first step isn't revenge. It's control. You sit down that morning with a bowl of dried figs and yesterday's crusty bread and begin making a mental list, not of enemies, not yet, but of leverage. You think like a merchant now, not a girl in a bed. Who owes you? Who fears you? Who thinks you're just another shadow behind a curtain? First on the list, Gas, the banker's son. Arrogant, soft-palmed, always flushed with his father's coin and no sense of consequences. He's come to the Lupanar twice a week for months, preferring younger girls and always requesting they call him Dominus Maximus. You know his secret. He's in debt deep. He talks about it like it's a game. Just until Saturnalia, he says, just until the grain shipments come in. But you've seen the letters in his pouch when he's too drunk to notice. Real ones from real lenders with real threats. You write his name down first. Next, Decimus, the temple assistant. Quiet, unassuming, but always asking questions he shouldn't. You caught him once rifling through Brinier's ledger under the pretense of paying respects. You didn't say anything then, but now you remember. You remember everything. And then there's Lurio, the baker's cousin. He brings honey rolls when he visits and always slips an extra coin under the mattress. Like that makes him kind. But he also likes girls who flinch. And he once made Allaware on a chain around her neck for fun. You've watched him, heard his name in whispers. He's more dangerous than he looks. You don't write his name. Not yet. His type deserves more than a list. That night, Vibius summons you a bump in. This time, to a villa outside the city proper, somewhere in the hills where the air smells like pine resin and nobody screams in the night, unless it's part of a ritual. The servant meets you at the gate, leads you through a garden filled with marble birds and creeping ivy. Vivia is waiting in a colonnade, wine in hand, eyes sharper than ever. I heard you've been asking questions, she says. You nod. Good ones. To whom? To people who matter. And what did you learn? Enough to be dangerous. She sips her wine. Show me. You pull a small piece of parchment from your cloak. On it, 2 names, 3 figures, and a date. It doesn't look like much, but it's a schedule of temple distributions. Dr. to hide misused funds. You explain how Decimus forged signatures to funnel grain into a private villa. You don't say how you found it. You just say it's real. Vibia reads it, then folds it slowly. This is good, she says. Better than I expected. She tucks the paper into her robe and looks at you closely. You're becoming quite useful. You meet her gaze. I want more than coins. She tilts her head. What then? A way out. Somewhere to go. Somewhere clean. She smiles faintly. Clean doesn't exist, but I can offer quiet land. A cottage maybe, far from here. You nod. I'll earn it. When you return to the Looper, Bryony is waiting. She doesn't yell. She doesn't accuse. She just points to the corner of the room and says, Allah hasn't moved all day. You find her curled up, silent, her breath shallow. Her face is blotchy, her hands trembling. You sit beside her and wrap your arms around her shoulders. She whispers, I don't want to do this anymore. I know. Can I be like you? You don't know what that means. You're not sure she does either, but you say yes. You give her the list you started. She reads it slowly, then looks at you with something close to war. We're keeping score now. We always were, you say. We just never wrote it down. Over the next few nights, the list grows. You don't gather everything yourself. You send girls to listen, not to pry, just to be present. Invisible the way you've always been. The information trickles in who bribed whom, who beat their servant, who talks too much when they think no one's listening. The Looper becomes a different place. Not on the surface. Clients still come, coins still clink, backs still arch, and mouths still moan. But beneath it, there's something else growing. A network, a quiet web, and you're sitting in the center of it. Historical truth. In late imperial Rome, brothel began functioning more like informal guilds. Women shared knowledge, even created codes to protect each other. Some historians believe these early forms of solidarity planted the seeds for later female networks, though they weren't always romantic or ideal. Sometimes they were survival, plain, and brutal. Fringe fact: in one Lupanar in southern Gaul, archaeologists found a series of tiny carved tablets lists of names, transactions, warnings. It looked like accounting, but some of the symbols were unfamiliar. Cipher, maybe, or a code, shared among workers to keep track of dangerous clients. One name appeared 27 times. And the scholarly debate, how organized were these brothels really? Some argue they were simple individual businesses with no cooperation between girls. Others insist the women formed complex whispered alliances, Praetorians of sorts. The truth is murky. Most records were written by men, and men rarely bother preserving the thoughts of the women they sleep with. But your truth, you're building something now. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't need one, but it's real. Griner pulls you aside after a week and says, I hear less screaming, more laughter. You nod. I've noticed too. She pauses. You're changing things. Not enough. It's a start. Later, Gas the banker S.A. stumbles into your room. Drunk, arrogant, bragging again. You press your hand to his cheek, leaning close and whisper, "Pay your debts, Gas." They're watching. He blinks, confused. "What? The ones you owe?" They're talking. You smile sweetly. "Maybe next time you should bring more than pocket change." He leaves rattled. You let him go because fear is worth more than a coin, and some debts can't be measured in silver. You wake to the sound of water being poured outside your room. But it's not the usual slap and slosh of morning cleanup. It's quieter, steadier, like someone's being careful not to spill. You lie still, listening, then a soft knock. Not one of the girls, not a client either. When you pull back the curtain, it's the child. 8, maybe 9, boy. Familiar. He's the same messenger from weeks ago. The one who brought Vivia's first scroll. He holds out a bundle. No words, just a tight mouth and wide eyes. You take the bundle. It's a small linen pouch, heavy in your hand, and unwrap it slowly. Inside a single gold aureus, real gleaming. That alone would be enough to rent a room in a decent part of town for weeks, maybe even a month. But there's more. A note folded tight. You open it. One more task tonight. Behind the temple of Apollo. Come alone. Wear red. No signature. No seal. Of course. You glance at the boy. Who gave you this? He shrugs. Woman with green bracelets. Vivia. Always the same jewelry. Always just enough to be noticed. But not questioned. You nod. Hand him a fig, and he runs off. All day your mind churns. Why meet behind the temple? What task? And why red? It's a color that screams for attention. Unusual, even provocative, especially at night. You don't like it. It feels like bait. Still, you obey. You always do. That's the unspoken contract, isn't it? You play your role, and in return, the game goes on. As night falls, you borrow a red tunic from Brinier's costume trunk. A leftover from a festival or a role play, something worn once and forgotten. It's too tight across the chest, but you make it work. You braid your hair and pin it high, cleaner than usual. Then you wait for the city to dim. The Temple of Apollo looms white and towering at night, its columns glowing in the torchlight like ribs of a sleeping god. You slip around the side into the shadowed garden where laurel trees grow like sentinels. And there she is, Vivia, hooded this time, her gown plain but unmistakable. "You're early," she says. You shrug. You said wear red. I assumed that meant punctual. She doesn't smile. Her voice is clipped tonight. "There's someone I want you to watch." He arrives here. Every loony prays, gives coin, then meets someone. "I want to know who." You nod. "Just observe for now." You melt into the shadows near the outer colonnade. Heart beating in your throat. You're good at disappearing, but not here. Not in a sacred space where you don't belong. If anyone sees you, there'll be questions, punishment, maybe worse. You breathe shallow, watching the temple steps. After a while, you spot him. Robed, clean-shaven, middle-aged, expensive shoes. You recognize him. He's visited the Lupanar before. Once, maybe twice. Always quiet, generous, never gave a name. He kneels at the altar, whispers something you can't hear, then slips away down a side path. You follow at a distance, quiet as falling dust. He meets another man in the grove, a priest, judging by the robe. They speak in low voices, then exchange something, a scroll. The man leaves. The priest disappears into the dark. You return to Vivia. Breathe shallow. She asks, "Well?" You tell her everything. She doesn't react, but something shifts in her shoulders like a knot released. "That's all," she says. You can go, but you don't move. "Who was he?" You ask. She hesitates then. "A man with too many ambitions and too few enemies." "Until now." You nod slowly. "And what happens next?" "That depends," she says. "Do you want to watch the world shift or be part of the hand that moves it?" You don't answer. You don't need to. The gold in your pouch answers for you. When you return to the Lupanar, the hallway smells like wine and ash. Mariep is dragging a stool back into her room with one foot, muttering about fleas. Aya is asleep in your bed again. You leave her be. You sit down and begin writing. Not for Vivia, for yourself. A list, a new one. This one isn't names, it's plans. You want land, a roof, safety, but not just for you. You start with secure income, then establish safe house, than by silence with coin or fear. Your handwriting is sloppy, but your vision is clear. Historical note. The Temple of Apollo in Rome was both sacred and political. It wasn't just a place of prayer. It was a meeting ground, a statement of allegiance. Senators aligned with Augustus made donations there to curry favor. Deals were made in its shade. Secrets traded beneath its golden statue. Fringe detail. A priest in Apollo's temple was once arrested for leaking prophecies for coin. Supposedly, he sold divine messages to gamblers and politicians who then bet on elections or trials based on omens. He was exiled, but his notes, scraps of goat hide, were found decades later stuffed inside the wall of a brothel. Debate whether women like Vibia existed in numbers or were anomalies. Some scholars say powerful women maneuvered behind the scenes, constantly using money, marriage, and servants to bend politics. Others argue those stories are romanticized exceptions. You're not sure which side you fall on, but you know this. Vibia isn't the only one pulling strings. She's just the one who recognized that you could pull too. You lie back beside Aya and watch the shadows on the ceiling. Your room smells of oil and girl sweat and stale perfume. But beneath it, something else is rising, a current. You're not just surviving anymore. You're playing, and you're getting good at it. The morning after your meeting behind the Temple of Apollo, Rome feels like a different city, not louder. Rome's never quiet, but tuned differently, like someone's tightened the strings, and now everything hums with tension. You move through it with purpose, your cloak heavy with the scent of torch smoke. Your head still spinning from Vivia's words. Do you want to watch the world shift, or be part of the hand that moves it? You said nothing, but you already know the answer. You slip back into your routine at the Lupanar, but it's become more illusion than reality. The clients still come, some familiar, some forgettable. You perform just enough to be convincing, but your mind is elsewhere now, watching, calculating. You're tracking everything. Who comes in? Who stays late? Who tips in silver instead of bronze? You catch whispers, you memorize names, and every few days you deliver carefully folded notes to a vendor's cart at the Forum, hidden among olives and empira. The coins appear the next morning beneath your mattress. Vibia pays well, but she's not the only one watching you anymore. Grinia corners you after dusk, her face pale beneath her usually ruddy complexion. She holds out a scroll. This was left for you. No name, no seal. You open it with slow fingers. You've made noise. Be careful what echoes. You don't let Grinia see your reaction. You fold it again, tuck it into your tunic, and meet her gaze. Probably a bad poem. She doesn't laugh. You're being watched, she says. Not by me, you nod. I know. Later that night, after your final client, a waxy man who insists on being called imperator and falls asleep mid-sentence, you retreat to the back courtyard. Aya finds you there barefoot, breathing in the scent of crushed mint leaves from someone's abandoned drink. You look like you're planning to disappear, she says. Maybe I am. She sits beside you. Marcia sent word. Your head jerks up. She made it. The farm is real. The aunt's kind. The baby's healthy. You exhale shaky. She said to tell you, don't wait for the door to open. Build your own. You both sit in silence. And for once, it feels peaceful. Not the calm before something. Not the quiet that masks danger, just quiet. The next day, you meet Vivia at the old granary near the river. It's late afternoon, the light gold and heavy. She's dressed simply, her hair pinned in a coil, her cloak dusty. You realize she's hiding more now. Not just herself, but fear. They're looking into me, she says. Someone saw us at the temple. You stay still. I'm leaving. Not far, just long enough for this to blow over. And what happens to our work? She looks at you. Really looks. You take over. You blink. Excuse me? I've shown you the shape of it. You know how it flows. You know who talks, who listens, who pays. I'm a prostitute, Vibia, not a senator. She leans in. You're whoever you decide to be. That's the difference between surviving and escaping. She presses a scroll into your hand. Names, notes, addresses, then a second pouch. Heavy again. Gold. This is the last time we meet, she says. At least for now. If you get caught, burn that list. And then she's gone. Just like that. You don't look at the scroll until you're home. Your hands shake a little. You don't know if it's fear or power. Probably both. Back at the Lupanar, Bronny nods at you. Not warm, not cold, just acknowledgement. Something shifted. She sees it. You hand her two names. I'm gonna keep an eye on. Men who've been asking too many questions. She raises an eyebrow. You trust me with this? I trust you don't want a riot in your atrium. She grins, just slightly. Fair. From that day on, things move faster. You don't ask for permission anymore. You speak less and hear more. You arrange for one of the girls to stop working nights. She now gathers whispers in the taverns. Another starts recording overheard conversations in a wax tablet she pretends is for poetry. You're building something. A network, a whisper chain, a weapon. And then one night it happens. A senator's son comes in drunk, smug mouth too loose. He corners in the hall and grabs her wrist too tight. She screams. You're there in seconds. He shouts. She's A__, I paid. You don't speak. You hold his gaze. And now you'll pay again. He sneers. No, you say. I'll tell your mother. The one who funds half the temple. The one who thinks you're fasting this month. His face pales. You step closer, voice low. I know where you sleep. I know who you owe money to. I know the name of the slave girl you made cry last week. Keep touching my girls, and I'll make sure everyone else knows, too. He stumbles out swearing. You let him go. Aya looks at you like you've grown wings. You haven't. You've just decided not to be quiet anymore. Historical fact. By the end of the Republic, many brothel, especially those in urban centers like Rome, were informal hubs of surveillance. Servants, prostitutes, and tavern girls often carried secrets from one patron to another. Whether for coin, safety, or power, their networks rivaled the formal intelligence of any government official. Fringe detail. Some Roman women, especially freed women with brothel experience, became private informants. One was rumored to be employed by a Priya's wife to track her husband's affairs. She eventually vanished. Some say she fled to Egypt. Others say she was silenced. Scholarly debate. Did these women hold real power, or were they simply tools used by the powerful? Some argue they were disposable. Others argue they were irreplaceable. But the truth is clearer now. Power isn't just who gives the orders. It's who knows when to speak and when to stay silent. You finish the night on your cot. The silver mirror beside you. You unwrap it again. Hold it to your face like you barely recognize the woman there. Not because you look different, but because for the first time you look free.